K-Chite Show with Noe B and my co-host Daniel Duran. Daniel, how you doing, buddy? You doing good today, man?
Feeling great, man.
Yeah. Well, man, we're gonna kick it off. We're gonna talk about UFC Fight Night 63. Mendes versus Ricardo Lamas. Man, what was your intake on that fight, man?
That was an intriguing fight. I was looking forward to that one, and didn't know what to expect. I know, both fighters come in like dynamite.
They hyped up that fight, man. They hyped it up. They were both good fighters. It was number 1 against number 4, right?
Sure, top 5 guys.
So, I mean, it was a very exciting fight that we're looking out for to watch. Of course, Mendes won the fight, man. In the first round, finished it pretty quick, man.
And Lamas, Lamas came out sharp. His mobility looked good. He was teeing off, getting some shots off, but man, leave it to Mendes and his experience. He stayed calm and composed, just kept on point, stalking him, and man, just timed that right hand, and
Well, that's his money shot, man. Right. That's his money shot, and he caught that right hand. And I mean, it was a very impressive fight on his part, man. He was landing his striking. It was just phenomenal, man. And he controlled the fight, man. I was very impressed with his fight, man. One thing that I noticed is when he set up, at one point he set up a nice knee, and then he caught him with a hook, boom, dropping his opponent. And when he dropped him, man, he just went in there, executed, what fighters should do. But when he finished the fight, what was, it's a plus and minus situation, because he got a good position. He landed 2 clean shots on the ground and pound, and looked at the referee like, stop it, or like what's gonna happen, and then the referee decided, okay, I'm gonna stop it.
Well, there was quite a trail, he hurt Lamas, and that was interesting. I was impressed in how he remained composed through that finish. He didn't just go spastic and try to finish it. He hurt him, and he just, it almost looked at a point he was going to take his back, and then he realized he was getting some more shots in. Lamas, he scrambled. He scrambled for quite a bit of time, actually, before, Chad out finally, after just shot after shot, like you said, looked up at the ref like, what more do I have to do? And I don't necessarily would have,
Yeah, what I mean about the plus or minus thing, because, I mean, I've seen it time after time where a fighter loses a fight, and then gets upset at the referee, like, man, I should have won the fight. I was on top. I was dominating. I stopped to look at you, and then the guy gets up, or he manages to survive and end the round. Guys, I tell a lot of guys that I train with, when you're out there, man, and you're ground and pounding, don't worry about protecting that fighter. That's what the referees are for, man. And here in Texas, we got a lot of good referees, like Jake Montalvo that we sat down and talked to just recently. We got a lot of Coloy. We got a lot of good referees all over the state of Texas. And, they're human as well, too. But let the referee do his job. I thought he was good sportsmanship, what he did. He knew he dominated his opponent, but sometimes you can't stop, man.
He knew he was hurt. I mean, like I said, and again, it just shows his experience. And again, I was impressed the way he just finished it very clean. It looked like, again, Chad was just on point, man. He knew exactly what he needed to do, and it was a great night for him.
Well, it was a first-round finish. It was a very exciting fight. For the first minute, 2 minutes and 14 seconds.
Right.
But here's the thing, too. Mendes actually ties Dustin Poirier with the most finishes in UFC history in the featherweight division.
Oh, that's right. I keep thinking, wow, they're so young. But the featherweight division?
Yeah, featherweight division. So it is. That's actually he's actually finished 5 of his last 6 wins. So I mean, that's very impressive. That's something that the UFC likes to look at. That's something that fans love to look at, is finishes. And, they want to see finishes.
And Dustin put another feather in his hat earlier that evening.
Exactly. And talking about Dustin Poirier, he actually fought one of the locals from the Rio Grande Valley, from Texas, Carlos Diego Ferreira. I mean, what do you think about that fight, man? Overall, everything.
Noe, I have to say, I was intrigued because, we got to interview him and see him
the week before the fight.
Exactly, and, in that interview, I recall you mentioned, strategically, hey, Dustin Poirier's left hand is lethal, and you called him out how expert he is at utilizing that southpaw position. And, of course, Diego has his plan, but, man, you called that fight, man. I mean, that was interesting. When I was watching it unfold, I was just like, whoa. This is textbook, Noe called it?
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, when he says I called it, not that I wanted Diego to lose.
No, of course
I wanted Diego to win. I'm a fan of his, and I know he's a great fighter. I know he has some striking power, and I know he has outstanding jiu-jitsu. But, you know, my biggest concern, and it was a concern because, you know, I wanted Diego to win, so my biggest concern is, like, you have a game plan for that because...
Exactly. That's what I mean.
The one talent that I do have, and I'm not going to brag about it, you know, a lot of people know that I do have it, is that I can see what a fighter's doing. I could, you know, from a fight, I can see it and I know what happens. I know what he's doing. I know where his foot is at. I know what's going to come. I pretty much see all that. But if you give me your name or a phone number... I'll ask you 10, 14 times and I'll still forget, man. I don't have a good memory like that. Like when my wife tells me to take out the trash, I always forget. I want to, but I forget. but you know what? That fight, it was a quick fight. But there was a lot of mistakes done in that fight. Of course, Diego's a great fighter, but he squared up on a fighter like Dustin Poirier that throws a straight left. You cannot square up on an opponent like that because it opens for a straight shot.
And you mentioned earlier, he didn't only just square up, but he squared up with his hands wide. Yeah. You know, and again, just that precision that Dustin demonstrates, man, it came through.
Yeah, it definitely came through, man. You know, hats off to Dustin Poirier on that great win. You know, of course, we were going for Diego, but at the same time, this is a sport. The best man won that night. And it's just going to be a stepping stone for Ricardo's. I see him still progressing. I think he's still going to be around.
He's young and strong. And just to get around him, you recognize he's a tremendous athlete and he's got a bright future. I'm sure we're going to see some great fights from him.
And this is another thing. I mean, he's not giving no easy fights, man. It's a tough fight. Dustin Poirier, of course, he's a great fighter. He trains at American Top Team at Coconut Creek. And trains with some of the top level fighters. He trains with some of the best fighters there in Florida. Great fighter, man. But let's also talk about, that happened 2 weeks ago, this past Saturday, and we talked about it. Gabriel Gonzaga against Crow Cop. What were we going to expect on that, the rematch? I mean, we saw the first fight. It was a quick fight. Gonzaga knocked out Crow Cop. What did you think was going to happen? Not what happened. What did you think?
You know, interesting because we haven't seen either of these two fighters in a while. You know, and then of course interesting. Crow Cop Gonzaga too caught my interest. I was eager to see what was going to unfold. I didn't know what to expect. You know, Gonzaga came out looking strong and stalking, and Crow Cop seemed a little hesitant. He didn't really seem to want to. In fact, most of his punches in the first round where he was backing up, throwing punches. So it really wasn't effective, and I really thought that Gonzaga, took the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, he definitely did take the first 2 rounds. I'm gonna say, Crow Cop. I'm a believer. I'm a big fan. I've watched him since Pride. I just saw this guy kicking everybody in the head and just gracing them, knocking everybody out. I mean, the dude is a badass. I mean, that guy's special forces. I mean, he's done it all, man. He's a bad dude. Well, I mean, yeah, time had passed by where we were watching him in the UFC. He wasn't the same Crow Cop we were watching on Pride. And, when he fought Gonzaga the first time, got knocked out by his bread and butter kick.
And that was Gonzaga was in his prime, coming up in his, just coming up kind of in his youth and really making his name for himself.
Well, in this fight, like you said, man, the first 2 rounds, Gonzaga was winning the fight, taking him to the ground, landing some elbows, landing some strikes. In the second round, cut Crow Cop. It looked like the fight was done.
Sure.
It looked like it was done. But in that 3rd round, when Crow Cop came out, he looked like, I don't know what happened in his corner. He had his game face on. Crow Cop was stuffing all the takedowns.
Yeah, well, Gonzaga looked gassed. I definitely noticed that the gas tank looked like it was lower, and Crow Cop looked a little more fat.
But he knew the recipe to win the fight. He was trying to take that takedown. Crow Cop was stuffing those takedowns. Then they managed to clinch up. On that clinch, at first when I saw it off the back, I thought it was a hook, a left hook that landed, but it was that elbow. Yeah. Ooh, it landed 2 nice elbows right in the temple. The second one, I would say like a little bit behind the ear, maybe the back of the head.
Yeah, that hurt him.
2 vicious elbows, rocked Gonzaga, took him to the ground, started working that ground and pound. And it amazed me, man, because I thought Crow Cop was going to tell him get back up, but Crow Cop said, I'm down there, I'm going to finish this. Landed some body shots, brought him to the head.
And a fury of elbows.
Oh,
man,
yeah.
Those elbows started
then
getting through.
Then he cut him.
Oh, it was horrible. Did you see that?
Yeah, it was a big old cut, man.
That was probably one of the worst I've seen, man. I think it was like from the top of the forehead all the way down the corner of his nose.
Yeah, it's going to take some stitches for that one. Yeah. But you know what? Crow Cop got the win. I was excited.
I was impressed. That was a good fight.
It just sucks because, I don't like to see fights that early either, man. I don't want to see them at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Actually, that one was at 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's right, the early event.
Yeah, it was an early event, man. But either way, Crow Cop got the win. It was a great fight for UFC Fight Night.
You know, I really enjoy those kind of upsets where you see the momentum in one direction and then just like that it changes.
And that's what makes a sport.
That's MMA, exactly.
That's what makes a sport great, man. It makes it exciting. And when we come back, guys, we're gonna come back and talk a little bit about Legacy Fighting Championships, the return of Daniel Pineda, a former UFC fighter, great fighter, and we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about that. Hey guys, we're back talking about Legacy Fighting Championships 41. It was a great show. The main event, for the main event at 155, Johnny Carson versus Daniel Pineda. Man, you saw that fight. What'd you think about that fight?
Man, it was a good fight. You know, it was very good fight. You know, big fan of Daniel. You know, coming from Houston, from the Houston area. You know, been a big fan of him for a long time, and I know he's past Legacy champion. Man,
He's won a few titles there, right?
Absolutely.
How many did he win on there?
Two. I believe he's had 2 titles with Legacy. Coming from the UFC, he's high caliber. I didn't know much about Mr. Carson, but Daniel came out on top. Dominating the first round, I felt. And of course, I also heard that, and again, Daniel came out looking pretty good. Given that he only took the fight, I think, 2 weeks, and didn't have a lot of time to prepare.
They were mentioning that he was sick. So, like you were saying earlier, it was like a 5-day training camp or something like that.
Right.
But at the same time, Daniel Pineda, man, he's no joke. He's a great fighter. Everybody knows who he is in Houston. A lot of people know him all around Texas. They know him all over the place. I mean, this guy, he's fought in the UFC, like you said. And, of course, he had his 3 losses. And then, if you get 3 losses, you get kicked out of the UFC. But, the question is, well, we'll talk about his fight. And then we'll get to that, what I'm getting at. But, Daniel Pineda's fight, man, the first round, Carson was no joke. I didn't think he's probably not at his level, but he did come out aggressive, landing some strikes, kicks, and came out aggressive immediately in the first round. Daniel Pineda just quickly took him to the ground, controlled him on the ground, and he stayed, you could see him real calm and composed, man. He never looked in any danger at all whatsoever. Carson had him in some pretty scary positions, and Daniel's face was just so calm and composed. Well, he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Right. He
trains at 4 Ounce Gym. That's actually one of the best MMA schools in the state of Texas, and in the nation as well too. And tell me a little bit more about that fight, man.
Well, like you said, man, Daniel came out. He got Carson came out with the fury punches. I think again looked sharp as well. Daniel got the takedown. Controlled it there. But then, man, how the tables turned. The second round came in, and Carson caught Daniel and dropped him early, man. And
that's right. I forgot about that with a straight punch.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. Dropped him, and then got top position, and then, man, he dominated that round.
Yeah, and I had the first 2 rounds. I had 1-1. So it came down to the 3rd round. But in that 2nd round, that's right, when he caught him with that straight left, Daniel went straight back.
Yeah,
but, at the same time, I don't think it was too much of the vicious punch. I think that he just caught him a little
on his heels,
and he went straight back.
Right.
And like I said earlier, man, in the first round, he did the same thing in the 2nd round. Once he took him down with a straight punch, Daniel Pineda was real calm, composed, looked at his corner, and, got back to control. The round was over. Of course, he lost that round. But in the 3rd round, Daniel Pineda came out a little bit aggressive, landing his kicks. He threw some kicks, threw some strikes, he even threw a spinning back fist.
There was a really great combination.
Exactly.
That was just like a kick, spinning, then a back fist, and then right into the kick, then the takedown.
It was very aggressive, but at the same time, man, my hands down to Johnny Carson. He actually defended himself through the whole progress, but he was still moving back. A lot of times, if they're coming straight at you, I encourage a lot of guys that I train is move at a 45-degree angle. It's kind of like a bull and a matador, just kind of move at a 45-degree angle, because if you move straight back, you're just going straight to the wall. So yeah, when he landed that nice combination along with the spinning back fist, it was nothing to look fancy. I think any of that stuff would have landed, it was going to be vicious. And Daniel Pineda just went in there aggressive, pushed him back, took him to the ground, quickly got a half guard, and then
he worked in the side control,
and then he pulled off, you have to be kind of strong to do this, man. He kind of pulled off that Kimura. And I was asking Daniel earlier, would you consider that as a Kimura, submission that he had on him.
Well, you know, it's a figure 4 lock with the hands, and he did get, you know, the side control, that position, that corner, but then it's like he actually at some point, because you're right, it's because you don't have control of the body, so you don't have the same kind of leverage when you pull that same position like when you're on your back from the guard. But so it did change where he lost that figure 4 position, but he maintained the hook, and once he gave up that figure 4, he was able to actually get more range of motion and leverage that position more, and get him where, you know, that the same stress as far as that, what a Kimura it does. Yeah. It's the same basic, you know, a rip on the rotator cuff. And man, you know, awesomely executed for the win.
Yeah, when he pulled that off, you know, that's like we were saying earlier. Daniel Pineda is a great fighter. You know, he's fought in the UFC. He's fought some of the best fighters. He actually fought Leonard Garcia. Well, when he fought Leonard Garcia, it should have been a UFC fight, but it was on Legacy. And Legacy's been putting on some great fights. Mick Maynard's been doing a good job, you know, producing great fighters. And he caught Leonard Garcia with the same submission, beating him. That was a great fight, man. That was a great exchange. It was a good fight. Look for it, guys. It's on YouTube. I mean, It was a great fight. But talking about Daniel Pineda, the question was, and they kept on announcing it on TV when the fight was going on, he's a win away from going to the UFC.
Back to the UFC.
Now, we're not saying that fight's going to get him to the UFC, but can you see Daniel Pineda going back to the UFC?
Absolutely. You know, absolutely. You mentioned before, you know, Daniel's, fights in the UFC were tough ones, man. It's not like they just, you know, gave him, you know, another person.
I don't think they ever gave him an easy fight, man. No, I think every single fight that he had in the UFC was all top fighters, man. I mean, just the Michael Brown fight was a great fight, man. I saw a lot of exchanging. His wrestling was great. His ground game was great. His striking was good. But, I mean, it was just a great fight overall, man. Do I see Daniel Pineda going back? I think so.
I think so, too.
I think his performance on this last fight could have been a whole lot better, but it was great.
Well, again, please consider 2 weeks' notice, and, you know.
And he was sick for 5 days.
Exactly. And I've seen Daniel before, you know, when he steps in the cage, and, man, he's always looking sharp. And, you know, this time, he didn't have his physique didn't look, but that doesn't always say everything. So, you know, given that, his performance was great.
Well, hopefully, man, and you know, at the same time, I like to see him a little bit more on Legacy. You know, only because, you know, he's a great fighter, man. But at the same time, you know, the tickets there for the UFC, hey, man, I would love to see him there in the UFC as well, too.
Well, a lot of Texas pride, you know, any guys from Texas, we're going to be behind.
Yeah, you know, exactly, man. And a lot of the Texas guys that go to the UFC, they're all great fighters. People got to understand, man, that the UFC is a level, man, that's it's higher than the next level, man. How can I say it, man? I mean, you got world-class fighters. I mean, and they all belong there.
Medal there for sure.
They definitely belong there, man. So a lot of these guys, you know, they lose in the UFC. It's not mean that they're not good or not, man. I mean, they're fighting top-level fighters.
And we have to say, to get to the UFC, you're great. You know, you're competing at a level of great. I mean, all these guys have earned a position there in the UFC because they're great fighters. You know?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about, when we come back, we'll talk about STFC. They had a show a couple of weeks ago. We were out there.
Battle at the beach.
It was a battle at the beach. It was a great show. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about that. Hey guys, we're back, and we're going to talk a little bit about STFC's South Padre Island that just happened a few weeks ago. What do you think about the show overall, man?
You know, Battle at the Beach was a phenomenal show, man. You know, STFC has been in this business a long time. You know, they put on a really first-class show, lots of lights and you know, lots of flash. So, you know, I enjoyed it. It was awesome.
It was definitely a great show, man. You know, it's come a long way from seeing a lot of the local fighters. Now they're bringing fighters from all over different areas. We didn't get to see too much of the fights because, you know, we were in the back in the dressing rooms. We're actually working one of the fighters' corner.
Yeah, the co-main event.
The co-main event. And the co-main event, let's talk a little bit about that co-main event. It was Joel Scott versus Amador Ramirez, right?
Yes. Well, we know Ramirez was going to come out banging. You know, he's a tough fighter. We knew Joel was going to have a tough fight. But, you know, having worked with Joel, having trained with Joel, man, that guy's a beast. You know, he's definitely one of the top guys in the state, I believe. And it's just a matter of opportunity, you know, when he gets an opportunity to get out there and perform. Man, he looked good. You know, Joe looked sharp.
I mean, I get to work with Joel. I'm a striking coach, and I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I don't like to. He knows that. And we knew Amador was a great fighter. I've seen him before. I liked him, you know. I mean, when I first heard his nickname, the Ninja, I was like, let me see this guy. Let me check him out. And man, the guy is a great fighter, man. He has some great striking, very aggressive fighter. Can definitely take a shot. And I've seen him fight a few times there in Brownsville. I mean, in McAllen. And you know, like I told Joel, you know what? We can't joke around with this kid, man. He's a tough guy. They come from a good school, man. Their school, Cinco MMA, they're based more on wrestling. And you know, we got to be smart. We got to be smart fighters. And of course, you've worked with me too. You know, I like to play everything smart. Everything smart. And you know, we knew that kid wasn't gonna be no joke. You know, he's gonna be aggressive. So, like I say, man, you know, I've heard the saying before, and I've said it before in a different method. You know, we're here to play chess. You know, not checkers. So that's basically what it comes down to. And you know, we went out there, we worked our footwork. I mean, there was a lot to that fight that you know, because you saw behind the scenes what I'm real big on. So we had to work footwork. We had to work strategy. What strike's gonna land where? How's gonna, you know, and stuff like that. Everything was executed perfectly. Joel, he trained hard for this fight. And, you know, when the first round, he came out and was landing, you know, the straight punch. Like I said, man, left-handers are very dangerous and they know how to use it. Everything could be countered. You just got to know how. And he was landing his left strike. The openings were there. He went for immediate takedown. Controlled it. After they clinched up, they controlled it.
Well, one thing that I took from that experience was I noticed how important it is. You know, you started seeing some things really quick from Mendes, and you started calling it out, and that had an effect. You know, you were calling out whenever he was going to shoot that leg kick. You were calling things out, and I could tell it had an effect on. You know, oh man.
I've been doing that from way back then. Sure. You know, when we used to go to ringside and compete at top national levels and different for my boxers. You know, I used to do that a lot, and I'd help them out because I knew they were fighting a heavy puncher. So then when I knew that punch was gonna come, I would call the punch, and then the guy would just look at me like, should I give him the pleasure of throwing it or not throwing it? And he's gonna throw it, and he's like, oh, like, you know.
And again, all of that together, you know, Joel's, you know, phenomenal training, and then of course, you know, coupled with your coaching and cornering, it just made for a successful night.
Yeah, and he ended up pulling a Americano Kimura.
Standing Kimura.
And you know, he got it. You know, he had it locked in real good, and you know, but
man, Ramirez fought. He fought.
Yeah, man, he was protecting it from a weird position and holding on to it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a very tough guy. I talked to some of his trainers after the show. I go, you know what? You know, we clock in, we take care of our own guys. Afterwards, we clock out. We're friends. You know, we can talk. But I told him, you know what? You tell your fighter, man, he's a tough guy. He's gonna be back in the gym because he is a tough guy. You know, it's just one false move, and that's just what happened. But he's a tough guy, man, holding that Kimura for so long in that weird position, man. You're bound to eventually let it go, but he's a very tough guy, very tough fighter.
I think as the sport grows and as the fans grow with the sport, you know, those fighters who've been around a while and they get a heavier losing, you know, they start to lose a few fights. I think more and more folks aren't going to really say that matters too much. It doesn't necessarily, show the caliber of the fighter. I mean, because like you said, some guys just have tough fights. They're fighting top guys.
I mean, same thing with Joel, man. You know, his record's not what it was when it was in the amateurs, but you know, now in the pro leagues, sometimes you run across. You might be the best fighter, you might be the best stand-up guy, but you're gonna run across the guy. He might pull a submission on you. He might do this. He might do that. And that's the beauty of MMA. You never know what's gonna happen. It's not, I'm the best fighter, I'm gonna win. You know, anything can happen. How many upsets have we not seen?
Well, you know, the caliber of the athletes now, they're just at such a high level, and they're becoming more and more just well-rounded in all areas. So, man, everybody's dangerous. You know?
Now, let's talk about their main event. Their main event, Jemael, they call him Baby Hercules.
Mr. Atkins,
versus Danny Salinas. Danny Salinas is a local in the Rio Grande Valley. Jemael came from, I believe, Killeen area. And I didn't know too much about him coming in. When I saw him, you know what? I'm gonna say the truth. I didn't think he was a contender. I thought, you know, they just got him and said, hey, come on, let's go. And you know, Danny was fighting way out of his weight class. It might have been because he's probably been out for a little while. I don't know the situation.
Sure.
But he normally fights at 155.
Right.
And when he weighed in, I believe he was at 170 something, 179 or somewhere in that bracket. I'm not really sure. I'm just going off the top of my head. And Jemael, Baby Hercules, he came in, I think 185 or somewhere in that range. I'm just kind of freestyling.
It was a catch weight at 180 then.
Yeah, 180. Well, they have a weight tolerance. I believe it's between 10 to 12 pounds.
Yeah.
Even 15 pounds in the higher weight divisions. So it was within the tolerance. The weight is capable, but it looked more like if it was more Daniel's walking weight.
Right.
But at the same time, I could see maybe Daniel took the fight like, hey, you know what? I'm fighting a heavier weight. Heavy weights are slower. They're not as strong, and you know it was a coin toss for him. I really didn't know what to expect on that fight. You know, I was watching it as a fan. I was just sitting down. I even told you to sit down, watch the fight, enjoy it. And what'd you think about that fight?
Well, you know, man, rooting for Daniel. You know, again, local boy here from the Rio Grande Valley, always rooting. You know, for our homeboys. You know, to get out there and get the win. You know, Mr. Atkins, man, he surprised me. Like I said, I didn't know anything about him. You know, and again, you can never judge a book by its cover, but man, he came out there and really looked pretty sharp, you know, against Danny, and you know, man, he was landing some heavy shots. You know, Danny had a few moments in there where he came out with some powerful, you know, spinning back kicks to really kind of, you know, hey, let me show you what you're in danger.
I've seen Danny Salinas fight before, and you know, I know he cross trains. They train at Ehrenberg. He cross trains with Mr. B and Team Pound. And Mr. B's a real, I mean, they're a tough school, man. I've been out there, he's opened the doors to us and a couple of my guys, we've gone out there, and it's no light sparring, man. They go hard. And, you know, I always hear comments, man, Danny goes hard, man. I mean, that guy hits hard. I've seen him fight, man. Danny Salinas is a great striker, man. He's a great striker, very strong fighter. And so I figured, you know, hey, man, you know what? Danny's going to stand up with this guy and bang with him. I didn't know too much about Jemael, and the fight came out, man. Turned out he had some striking too. Yeah. He had some good boxing. He had some great striking. He looked like an all-round fighter.
Yeah.
But Danny Salinas came out with his quick hands, landing some vicious strikes, boom, boom, and Jemael countered back, dodging, moving, bobbing and weaving, countering, and controlling. They were both banging it out hard. In the first round, I remember somebody mentioned behind me, like, oh, I hope he finishes. I hope he knocks him out right now. I'm like, hell no, I wanted to go 3 rounds. You know, I'm talking as a fan. You know, I want to see chingazos. Yeah. But at the same time, man, it was some heavy hitting, man, in the first round.
And I remember Daniel getting caught, you know, heavy with a heavy hand at one point, and then that really looked at that point. It was tough for him.
After that first round, that's when I actually noticed where the weight played the factor.
Sure.
And that's where I went back to it's a coin toss, because I didn't know what I was going to see. And I'm sure Danny saw it that same way. Like, it's going to be one of those things, the first round, we might bang it out. Second round, this guy's going to be dying. You know, he's running out of breath. You know, he has no striking. Because you'll be amazed, man. A lot of MMA guys don't have great striking. Or they swing a little wild. And when you're fighting against someone like Danny that has good stand-up, great striking, you know, you would think like, hey, man, you know, it don't matter how hard he hits. I'm going to block. I'm going to counter. I'm going to be able to do all that. But, you know what, man, this baby Hercules was a great stand-up, man. He was throwing some serious bombs, and Danny was taking them. I mean, Danny showed that he's a tough guy, man.
Yeah, man, a lot of heart.
But I'm going to be honest, he don't belong in that weight class. I know he could fight someone walking around 200 pounds
maybe,
or
maybe
whatnot,
some of
and
the
knock
heavy
him
hands
out.
had an effect, but I did feel, you know, coming into the later round, you know, the second round, he, you know, it was he didn't, you know, I think he was, you know, getting gassed.
Well,
he didn't seem as
no, yeah, and Danny at one point started landing some low leg kicks that were being effective and hurting baby Hercules. But the thing
Hercules came right back.
This is what I liked about him, and this is what I liked about Hercules, is that he's a smart fighter, because not only can he strike, but he has ground game too.
Right.
Because
that's right. He took a couple leg kicks.
When he took the leg kick, immediately once he got a little wobble, he didn't hesitate and like, oh, let me see if I can stand up. Boom, he got wobbled, takedown. Yeah. And then he was a smart guy because he knew how to use his weight.
Sure.
He stayed on top of him, worked the ground and pound, work it, and you know what? It was a great fight, great performance overall. You know, it just kind of sucked that Danny had that fight at a bigger weight class. I know if they would have both been at the right weight classes, I know Danny is a great fighter.
Sure.
But at the same time, man, all credit to Jemael, because you know what, man, he is a good fighter, man. I started watching a couple of his videos.
I'm a new fan.
Yeah, he's definitely a new fan, man. And you know what? As a matter of fact, Danny Salinas is gonna be returning back to the cage, back to his original weight at 155 for JC Promotions in Bronzo. But as a matter of fact, you know, he's gonna be fighting. He's gonna be fighting one of the main cards, right? On that card.
Salinas, I'm not sure if he's on the main card.
Yeah, well, he's gonna. Well, the main thing is gonna return back to his original weight class, which we're excited to see. But let's also talk about what's coming up in the Rio Grande Valley. New events that are coming up.
Excited. Next weekend's
this Saturday coming up. This Saturday, we actually got to sit down and talk to Jake Montalvo, and he's having the RGV Jiu-Jitsu Open. It's the 5th annual Jiu-Jitsu tournament. Many years ago, well, 5 years before, most of the guys when they had to do Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, they had to travel up to Houston. You lived in Houston at the time,
right?
And that's where you have to go to do your main Jiu-Jitsu tournament. So Jake, gave everybody the opportunity and been very successful. He's been doing a lot of Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. Well, the 5th one, and they do it here at the Marine Military Academy, right next to the International Airport. Look it out, guys. We'll post some links. We'll post the interview later on. And check it out. So if you like Jiu-Jitsu, if you know how to row, go out there, register. I think you can even register
up until the day of, yeah.
At the day, you just show up and register, man. And Jake also told me they're gonna have a snack bar there with hot Cheetos and cheese. Apparently everybody loves hot Cheetos and cheese down here in the valley. But anyways, also this is exciting for a lot of MMA fans down here in the Rio Grande Valley. I know STFC was the only promotion down here doing MMA fights, and then of course when Texas Rage, I do a lot of shows up in the in Beaumont and some down here in the Rio Grande Valley. Now we got JC Promotions doing shows out here, in Brownsville area. So that's more excitement for the MMA fans, more MMA for more fighters, and it just means more fighters in the Rio Grande Valley. So the sport's just evolving. It's getting bigger. It's getting better. JC Promotions, they're having a show coming up June 6th. June 6th. They're going to be having a show in Brownsville.
Multiple titles, multiple contracts on the line.
Yeah, $50,000 contracts.
Yeah, man,
big event coming up. We'll talk more about that. We'll have more shows, and we'll keep you all more updated about that event coming June 6th. And then the following week, June 12th, STFC in McAllen.
I'm excited about that one too.
And they're going to have main event, man. It's going to be spectacular as well. Yep. So, guys, I encourage both go out to the Brownsville show June 6th, and then the following week, June 12th, go out to McAllen. They're both going to be great fights, man. Good shows, and that's what we got for this week, man. And stay tuned and
support your local fighters.
We'll see you on the next one.